Hey everybody, welcome back to Visual Novel Book Club. I'm your pal Slowbeef. With me, of course, my good friend Orenronen.
Hi.
My good friend Jim.
Hey everybody.
My good friend Turboc.
Hello.
Stumbled over your name a little. And my good friend Devious Vacuum.
Hello.
Hello. Well, this is it, episode 10, which I thought was 11, but whatever. I guess I'm wrong always. But what's going on? What happened? How are we doing in Quest to the Past?
Therapy Quest.
Redeem all the villains.
Therapy Quest 9.99, I think, is where we are. When we last left our heroes, Michel, he was about to go to sleep, and he said goodnight to Giselle, and Giselle was like, I don't know, which made it sound like she was gonna go away. She was like losing power somehow. And, the title card appears one day until her death, and, when Michel wakes up, he is tied up in the cellar, and Giselle's voice is gone.
Oh no, who could have tied him up?
Who could it possibly have been?
Nelly.
So this is like way overkill. Yukimasa comes in to interrogate Michel about like why do you know stuff about Morgana, etc., etc. And basically he breaks Michel's whole hand, and he also like cuts his arm or something. Mm-hmm. He breaks his whole hand one finger at a time.
I don't think he cuts his arm.
Does he do something to his arm?
I don't think so.
I think he does cut it.
He does? I don't think so.
Well, he starts trying to cut it off.
I think he breaks his fingers. This is exactly what he did to the guy in the ship in the second chapter. I think Michel's arm doesn't work because of his ties to Morgana or something. I think that's what's going on over there.
I thought no, he's definitely bleeding. Yeah, like Mel has to like fix him up. Spoilers well, you're supposed to have read this anyway.
Yeah. So how I summarize this in my notes is Yukimasa breaks Michel's whole hand, but also believes him. Because that's what fucking happens. He's like still hurting him really badly. He's breaking his fingers, and Michel's like, I know.
It's exactly what he did in the second chapter.
Yeah, I know about the future, like, I know this stuff about you. He, like, knows that, Yukimasa refers to people as, like, tethers and, all his, like, innermost thoughts. And, like, he's like, no, you're wrong, that's not me. And he, like, keeps breaking his hand, and then he finally is like, yes, you do know me exactly. How do you know that? How do you know my innermost thoughts? And then he finally stops, and then he, stops.
You must be a demon. Sorry,
yeah.
Go on.
And then Pauline bursts in.
Michel still keeps up I guess the truth, but the story of being from the future, because everyone's totally gonna buy that. But no, Yukimasa's just like, that's absurd. You're a demon.
And, so Pauline and Mel rush in, and, then, Yukimasa stops doing everything, and, Pauline is like, I'm so disappointed in you. You should set Morgana free. And she basically, like, they finally talk to each other. She says, like, I didn't, you're doing, and he's like, I'm doing this to help you. And she's like, I don't want this help. Like, I've always wanted to get married and leave the church. This isn't helping me for you to keep this church going. I don't actually want to do this anymore. And they finally, like, level with each other about what they actually want. And, basically, like, we kind of see from, what Maria already said, too, that, like, Pauline didn't really want to become a nun. She's just kind of, like, in that role because that was what she had to do to get by. But she's really sad that she can't fall in love and get married and have a family. And that's what she wanted with Yukimasa. And then, of course, Yukimasa's like, okay, I'll kill the Lord and get his key. And Pauline and Michel are like, no! No more killing!
She's like, not just a little killing, just a little bit.
I mean, yeah.
No.
Oh, we're not killing anyone. I thought it was just not good people. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
And what happens? Then Michelle's like, you have to tell me your story. That's the whole point. Like, you can't just like, give me your key. You have to tell me your whole story about how you got here. And he's like, well, I'll tell you later tonight. And, so then Michel goes off to,
And Pauline can be there.
and Pauline can be there. And,
Isn't that also where Pauline says that, well, Yukimasa basically says that if they free Morgana, he's going to get judged and probably put in prison or something. And Pauline says that and we could live together in the next life, like in a city near the sea.
yeah, and he says, like, you know, Michel knew that. He knew about the wish, and I think he tells them about their second life together.
Yeah.
And he's also like, in your next life, Pauline, you have like a mother and a father who love you very much, and you live in a city by the sea.
And we'll just gloss over the rest of it.
Yeah, don't worry about the rest of that. Yukimasa doesn't want to tell his story in front of Pauline because it's too fucked up, which is appropriate.
Also because, like, he reveals that he doesn't actually love her.
Yeah, he wants to talk about, like, this whole thing. So, on his way back, let's see. Oh, and then Michel, like, says internally to Giselle, like, even though she's not there anymore, like, that he won't stay in this life if he can't see her as well. So, still reassuring her that he's not gonna just, like, stick around and be incarnated, if that's even an option. Let's see. Then that night, Yukimasa arrives in Michel's room, and he says that he figured it out, that Michel is the Archangel Michael from the stained glass. And Michel's like, no, and he's like, yeah, you must be, if you're not a demon, then you must be an angel, and I want you to guide me, I want you to tell me what I should do, and he just, like bows down and is like, I'm gonna follow the Church of Michel, like, I'm gonna listen to what you have to say, please tell me, like, how I'm supposed to live my life.
You could do worse.
Yeah, for sure. But Michel's like, I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life, dude, I can give you, like, some advice, I guess.
No, I mean, look, this is a world where church is like, let's drink a kid's blood and it'll cure you, and this nun will get the credit for it. So yeah, I think Church of Michel is totally like one up in that one.
Much better, no child murder.
Right.
Or torture.
Yeah. Right.
So Yukimasa's like, should I tell Pauline that I don't love her because I'm not capable of love? Probably no, right? And Michel's like, probably no! This is so funny because, like, I mean, like, we all love Michel, but this is, like, the blind leading the blind. Like, you know, this is...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
He's a lot better. He's a lot better than he was because he's had to actually think about this and, like, see, you know, use his empathy in order to communicate with these other characters.
It's a group therapy session.
It really is. This whole game is therapy. So, Yukimasa's story. 5 years ago, he worked as a slave on the Silk Road. He also maybe lost his memory of earlier than that. Because he had the same experience of, like, losing his memory, and then also remembering that, getting a sword and then remembering that he knows how to use a sword. Like, that whole thing happened. Those same elements are repeated in this life. He ends up in the slave... So then we see the slave caravan scene with Morgana from his perspective, and he recalls that when he first heard her voice that is so clear and compelling, that was his first tether, his first feeling of calm.
I mean, even before that, he talks about how even the other slaves were cruel to him because of the way he looked, because he was Asian.
Oh, yeah, I didn't write it down, but yeah, he experienced, like, very similar themes to the second life that we know about from him.
Mm-hmm.
And, So Yukimasa decided, because of Morgana's voice, that he wanted to get her out of there, and that's what inspired him to kill everyone.
Well, yeah, as soon as he starts killing, like, it's just the overseer, and then once he just, like, he can't get enough. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't mean to kill the other slaves, just once he got a taste of blood, he just couldn't stop himself. He forgot why he even wanted to get out, to save Morgana.
He even says that, like, he got, like, a high off it. Like, at least in the English version, he's like, he uses that word even.
Yeah. And he when he talks to Morgana again at the end, where she says, like, why'd you kill them? That, like, snaps him back to reality a little bit. And then he's like, I don't know, and then leaves, because, like, that's honestly what he experienced. Like, he just, like, went crazy, but then when he heard her voice, it, like, snapped him back out of his, like, crazy murder spree.
Mm.
And that's it. There's no further explanation to that situation. That's all of it. And after that, he became a bandit. He was a bandit for a while, and he was doing okay, but then he got sick, and he needed to go to the doctor. And on his way to the doctor, he collapsed on the side of the road, and all these people walked by because, he was a bandit. And so they weren't helping him. They were just letting him die on the side of the road. And Pauline, being a nun, saw him and stopped to help and took him to the church. And in the church, Yukimasa says, she asks him what his name is, and he says he doesn't have a name. And so he says, why don't you choose my name? And she says
Yukimasa. It's weird.
Yeah, how did you know? But she says, well, you should be the one to choose your own name. And nobody ever remembers his name. Nobody does. If you're waiting for Michel and or Giselle to fucking remember his name's Yukimasa, that doesn't happen.
No, he's always referenced as swordsman. But my favorite part was, she even used the words, I think you should pick the name that suits you best. And I was expecting him to be like, best. Bestie, yeah.
Murder Kill Boy 5000. The strongest swordsman X. Sorry.
Longshoreman X, of course.
Right, yes. Thank you for the brand.
According to the developers, they say that Yukimasa is probably not Japanese man in this chapter, but probably from China.
Mm.
So he probably wasn't named Yukimasa in the beginning.
Mm.
So, let's see. So after initially staying there and getting better, Yukimasa continues to come back and visit Pauline, because she's his tether.
And this isn't a mention yet, it's just Pauline's previous church, where she worked before. Because the mention isn't a church yet, at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, right, yeah. And during, let's see, and then there's even, like, Pauline talks about, like, it must be, like, hard because everyone's racist against you, and she's like, I wish I could know some of your struggle, and she basically, like, wishes to be half Japanese in her next life.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
The ultimate weeb fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
That's just, we don't need to get that specific, you know, but, like, we're getting specific. Fata Morgana does not leave any loose ends.
Oh, man.
So, fine, except whatever the fuck happened to Georges in the painting. But maybe we'll get to that before the end of the game. But we don't get to it here, just so you know. Let's see. So Yukimasa confesses his love to Pauline, because she's in love with him, and he says he loves her, and she's like, oh, I love you too, I wish we could run away and I didn't have to be a nun. And he asks her what being in love feels like for her, and she thinks that, like, he's teasing her, but obviously he really wants to understand. And from her description, he deduces that she is referring to physical arousal, which he does not feel. Again, we're like, this is the past. There's a lot of subtlety here that these characters would not historically even have a concept around. So I don't know, you can kind of, like, have that land where you think it lands.
Yeah, it's weird though, because he's like, no, I don't love her. I just want to see her smile. And I'm just like,
that's love, bro. You don't want to have sex. That's different. But, you know.
I mean, well, you know, I mean, they, and I don't know if this is getting too far ahead, but they kind of go into his personality and things like he feels and doesn't feel, which is kind of how I was reading this to as a clue to, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't have, like, empathy with other people, per se, so love's kind of, like, a completely alien thing to him.
Yeah, well, he's a psychopath. That's the definition of psychopathy.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, that's what I thought they were kind of getting at here with, like, he doesn't feel like he's, like, necessarily capable of that, you know, so.
Yeah, but he is, like, self-sacrificing on her behalf, right? Like, he's willing to put himself on. So, maybe saying it very bluntly like that was also just to, like, reinforce to us, like, this guy is a psychopath. Like, we're not trying to be ambiguous about this.
Right.
Yeah. And this is not uncommon. Psychopaths do have relationships and do carry on them and convince other people, you know, to keep them happy that they are also experiencing the same things, even when they're not.
So, and he does care about Pauline to the extent that he wants her to be happy, and he like the effect that she has on him, he enjoys that.
Yeah, what word do they use in English for, like, an anchor or something like that?
Tether. Yeah.
Tether, okay.
Tether.
Yeah, I didn't read it. I didn't see this part in English.
Anchor would have been better for the boat theme of his chapter, but okay.
He's basically looking for people. He doesn't want to be a psychopath. He wants to understand how other people, like, live and feel, and he's looking for people who help him do that. And Pauline is one, and the white-haired girl in the second chapter was one, and Morgana is one when he speaks. And that's why he's attracted to her, not because I think he like follows any of our definition of what love is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's basically a selfish thing.
I was thinking maybe it was even just the closest he can ever get to it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I'm empathizing with Yukimasa is what I'm saying, okay?
Yeah, his position is not completely inconceivable.
Right.
But also, he's also the hardest person to understand based on his character. I mean, like, it is difficult to, like, we are also probably, you know, sort of pushing our values on someone who just doesn't function around people the way that we do. So it's tough to, you know, you want to invent something for like, oh, but there's something good inside him, when maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just all transactional, but at least it's transactional in a good sense for the world, in sort of society, if he is able to stop killing people and be peaceful with someone.
Yeah, being around these people lets him function in society.
I mean, I feel like it kind of goes with the same, like, sort of thing with Mel and his sister and how she felt about him, where it's like these things you don't dare talk about, but, you know, it, like, this is like the hard difficulty level of that, almost, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's also hard because, unlike Mel's thing, Mel and Nellie's weird, like, incest situation, currently we don't have, like, an answer in psychology for psychopathy, right? Like, there's no, like, yes, of course, this is how it always is dealt with, and so there's no, like, we don't know, like, we can, you know, look stuff up, but there's no, like, definitive answer of, like, this is how it works that's just, like, readily available in the common understanding. Versus something like I have romantic feelings toward my brother, and you like, well, maybe talk that out. Like,
that's the perfect cure for incest.
All right, here's what you do: you take a couple ghosts, right? And you put them in a mansion. All right, boom.
Shake it up.
10,000 years later, boom.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
We got no incest.
Psychopathy, we still got nothing for it, but at least incest, we got something.
Only takes 10,000 years. So, but anyway, so Yukimasa wants to raise money for the church to help Pauline. And he is summoned by the Lord, and the Lord, Jacopo, knows Yukimasa's whole deal. He, like, knows he's a murderer. He knows his whole story. He looked up his whole story. And he's like, you know, you're gonna help me, this is my, to execute this whole plan where he's gonna like turn the mansion into this new church, and Morgana's gonna be there, etc., etc. So then we go to the scene where Yukimasa arrives at the cottage to get Morgana, and when he does, he recognizes her voice, and that's why he doesn't break down the door and just take her at that time. I think this part is also important because it does show that, like, Yukimasa still, like, he made a choice, right? Like, he could have, and I think he even says, like, I could have walked away at that point and just been, like, fucked off, right? To, like, go be a bandit somewhere else and, like, left Jacopo hanging.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. And, then, there's also, the next thing I wrote, let's see. Oh, no, so then they go in and they, take her. I don't think it goes into the details of, like, why he cut off her arm.
I guess maybe what he said was just the truth. That, like, so because he had, like, kind of stalked her after he sat by the house and saw her walking around, with Mel. But when they go in, they don't go into it, but I guess it was just he thought that was payment. Like, cutting off her arm.
Yeah, I think it genuinely thought he was helping Mel.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because if he doesn't see people as people, right? Like, he sees them as objects, right? Like, that's the whole thing. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, he was genuinely confused why Mel would throw it in the lake.
Yeah.
I thought maybe there was a little bit of, like, and also this is probably, I'm going to enjoy this a little bit too, but...
Maybe.
I don't know, yeah. Is that a thing? Like, you sort of, like objectify people in that way, I guess, too? Or...
I've heard it described that way in terms of, like, when you read about, like, stuff like how do, like, sociopaths and psychopaths, like, view other people, like, what are people to them? I've heard it described as that people are more like objects. And so there's no differentiation between, like, a person being hurt and, like, a chair being broken.
I see.
But, so...
By the way, Visual Novel Book Club will double for actual psychology, just so you know. We're all experts.
I looked it up and there just, like, wasn't as much information as I thought there would be, like, just trying to look at, like, cursory, like, intro information into psychopathy and, like, treatments for psychopathy.
I do too, and I'm absolutely not throwing shade at you, by the way. It's more like, I always feel weird talking about stuff like this, because, like, I feel like I'm not really an armchair psychologist or anything like that, so I always feel bad.
And, like, someone listening to this could have that diagnosis and, like, really be living that life, and I have no idea what their experience is. Like, not at all.
They'll be like, nailed it, yep.
Yeah, shoutouts to anyone out there fighting the good fight, listening to this.
Shoutouts to Penelope. We know.
Oh my god!
What? What was wrong with the random name Penelope?
Shot in the dark.
I was gonna. The real Penelope listeners like, what? That's me? No, I was just a random name. It's not you, Penelope. Penelope is.
It's the other one. All right, moving on. Pauline gets sent to the new church, and she, even though she, doesn't really want to do this, she keeps telling Yukimasa that this is what she wants the most, and so he, takes her at her word, and so he's like, this is the right thing to do. So I think it's good that the communication is bad in both directions. Like, the same with, like, Mel and Nellie. Like, communication is bad in both directions. It's not just, that he wasn't listening to her. It's that she was telling him stuff and, like, waiting for him to pick up on subtext that he was never going to pick up on. And he also mentions that, Morgana's brought to the mansion, and he said that over time her voice diminished, and it didn't have the same effect on him anymore. And back in then we're out of the story within a story, and Yukimasa's talking.
He also says that the Lord insisted that they bring Mel in because that was a way to keep an eye on him, because they couldn't let anyone who knew the truth, like, just be out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think, Slowbeef, you criticized that before.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah. And Jacopo actually brings it up. He's like...
the actual reason was completely different when you learn what Jacopo's reason was later.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. That he's gonna, like... I think Jacobo. I don't know if it's a true impression, but it makes sense. I think when Jacobo's like, I think he's gonna go notice. You know what I mean? His disappearance.
Oh yeah, that if Mel died because he was noble, he thought that somebody would care that Mel died. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how true that actually is, but I can certainly buy that Jacobo would believe it. You know.
Yeah.
Jacobo's actual reason is completely different. Right? He talks about it later.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Doesn't even matter, this other thing. He was just bullshitting at the time. So the story ends, and Yukimasa's like, you can kill me if you want, I deserve it. and Michelle's like, give me a fucking minute. And he asks Michel to tell him the story of the second door, which he does. And Michel is like, dude, I really thought up till now we should all be true to ourselves, but not you, buddy. Why don't you just keep that inside? Don't talk about that with Pauline. Don't talk about that with anyone. Never talk about it. Try to force yourself to exist in society.
Keep it buried down forever.
Yeah, keep it buried in there. And Yukimasa's like, okay, I will. And that's their good talk.
Yeah, and like even when Michel gets done telling Yukimasa's like, yeah, that is really bad. That's even worse than I expected. That's horrible. I'm a psychopath, and even I understand how bad that story is.
Oh God. And so Yukimasa says, I'll get the Lord to have supper with you and Mel tonight. We'll corner him about it. And Michel's like, okay, and Yukimasa leaves, and the next person that Michel has to talk to is Maria, who promised to come back and tell us about how she knew Morgana. And obviously his arm is hurting him. It seems, after the arm injuries, I really felt like I don't think Michel is gonna make it past these 3 days. Like, even, there is because Giselle was like, oh, if you keep living, but after he got his hand broken, I feel like continuing to live after this is not on the table anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is in so much pain that he has like a pain vision. And it's a vision of Morgana's mom telling her to sell her miracles from Morgana's perspective. So she's like 6 years old. And, it's her sort of... Morgana has, definitely like... She has her way of speaking that is very holier than thou, obviously. Like this sort of saint voice that she uses where she's like, God's teachings are this. But, Morgana's mom, she's like, well, you're hurting yourself, and like, you should let those people, give you money so that you aren't hurt, so you can get something, get treatment or something, and be comfortable. And she's like, no. And the thing that I don't understand with this is like the next step, literally the next day, is to sell her rather than just, because she's 6 years old, take money anyway. Like, who's managing Morgana the Saint, right? Like, she's not doing it herself. So, you're her mom. When people come in, be like, we ask for a small donation.
Yeah, worst stage mom ever.
Yeah, what? I mean, toddlers in tiaras, this is not.
Nope.
It's like, you want to sell their blood? No. Well, I tried. Nothing else to be done.
Literally, that's it. Yeah.
I can't do nothing with a Honey Boo Boo. Anybody else want to take her off my hands? Go ahead. Start your own TV show. I can't do it.
I don't know. I also find it hard to believe that people weren't already trying to give them things, Like, and again, Morgana could say, no, don't give us anything, but she's 6 years old. Who listens to 6-year-olds? No one. They listen to the mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just wild. Anyway, whatever. So then the most horrible thing happens, of course, when she is, she's being hauled off and she sees her mom and she's like, why? Why'd you do this? And her mom mouths at her, because you're worthless to me. I don't know why this woman is not in this mansion being cursed.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like, even Yukimasa was probably like, oof, that's horrible.
Yeah, I guess she can't bring herself to curse her mom. I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like when it comes to, like, hating someone so much, like, and being so emotionally overwrought that, like, family, like Michel and his family, right? Like, family hurts so much more that it would just make that hatred. I don't know, but...
I was watching a documentary, which I won't go into details to, but it was at a really horrible person who was like the father of a bunch of children and stuff. And like, there were a lot of things that weren't consistent with that. I would have thought that too, but it was weird. Like when he was in the hospital, they go to visit him, and at his funeral, like a couple of people like actually like mocked him. This is how bad the guy was. And then, but other like people in the family defended him, because it's like these bonds you have, sometimes people can't like look past that. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, even if someone's really horrible, and sometimes like people, if they're like, feel that like, well, that's my dad, you know, or that's my mom or whatever, and I just can't like bring myself to like look at them the way I should be, like even justly, you know?
And up until that moment, from Morgana's perspective, her mother was only ever kind to her and showered her with love. Like, Morgana, being so young, had no perception that any of it was disingenuous.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's another good point.
And a lot of it's internal projecting of what you need. Like, the idea of mother and father to someone can be extremely significant in defining themselves, whether or not those needs or those projections are what the actual person is. Just needing to have that, you know, one person you can trust or two people you can trust to care for you, that sort of, you know, societal instinct that's imposed makes you want to think that there could be something redeemable, or make you want to not condemn the person, you know, who should have been there for you and maybe could at some point in your head. You know, you're always gonna, it's tough to let go of that.
Right.
As someone who has a lot of family drama, I could easily condemn them for eternity, much more than other people.
Same.
Like my old boss or whatever.
Same, absolutely. No.
I don't know. They were different. They were different type back then. But anyway, so while she's being
before it becomes therapy, the podcast. No,
yeah.
sorry,
So Morgana's being hauled off. She's in the carriage. She prays to God for help. She's like, you know, this test is too great. I can't do this. I can't do this. And that's the end of the dream that Michel has.
Don't we see a first meeting with the Lord here too? Or is that later? Because there is one scene where she...
Oh yeah, maybe it ends with the Lord being... Yeah, it ends with him being like, you can do whatever... You're gonna do whatever I want. Because the Lord... that Lord in the past is not Jacopo. So.
Yeah, and I didn't notice it at the time, but we don't see the Lord in that scene. We don't see a sprite.
Yeah.
That's very, like, deliberate. I went back and looked at it after we learned the truth later.
Yeah, but I think we've also, like, seen that exchange when we originally heard the story as well, where he's like, she, like, tells him, like, you know, this is not holy, and he's like, I don't care about that, we're gonna have a blood party, and ties her up and cuts her.
You know how much money's in that blood? The blood business? Get out of here!
That is another thing that just doesn't make any sense. The old Lord, again, another character that just got out of this scot-free, got to reincarnate or whatever, and but I guess, like, if he was a character in this, it would just be another Yukimasa, it seems like, from the way that the other characters describe the First Lord.
So I know he's a character in the sequel.
Wow.
The sequel is mostly about Jacopo, like an expansion on Jacopo's story.
Wow, everybody who's played all of these games was probably losing their minds when we were like, Jacopo's the worst character, fuck him!
It's weird though, because I get this is also, like, the whole curse is subject to Morgana's interpretation of events. So I think that would explain why the Lord isn't sticking around, because we'll find out more later on whether or not she's correct in her interpretation.
Okay, so then that's, like, the segue, the scene with the Lord, is, like, Michel, like, waking up and being like, I can't figure out any new information about the Lord, you know, like, what information am I going to use that's going to make this make sense, as to how I can get through to him? How could this person who, like, tied her up and cut her be, you know, how am I supposed to get through this guy? And, so Michel goes to meet Maria, and he's like, she sees him and she's like, you look really fucked up, because he got tortured and lost a lot of blood, and he, like, looks, he's in a rough way. And he's like, no, like, you don't understand. There is no, like, it's only till this time. I can't, like, take a break or anything.
Yeah, she's like, can't we talk tomorrow and you just get some rest? And no. You don't.
And in doing this, he basically, like, explains the situation to her in full. And he's like, I'm not just doing this to save myself. Like, I genuinely want to help Morgana. He realized, he like really, I guess, realizes it himself that he's like not just trying to like solve a puzzle or whatever. He wants to help Morgana. And so Maria opens up and talks more about that time. She says she's happy that Morgana's time at the brothel was happy. As she goes on, Maria's sort of uncomfortable, and it becomes clear that she was like not very nice to Morgana. She was not the nicest person to Morgana. And that she kind of like gave her space because she had her walls up. I feel like the biggest reveal of seeing other characters' perspectives on Morgana is like how much of like a closed off kind of jerk she is. Because she like never described herself that way, and like it's just funny to think about that. And it's like, well, no wonder nobody wanted to talk to you. Like, look how you were talking to them.
Yeah.
And let's see. Michel asks Maria if she wants to be there when Morgana is set free, when she's brought down from the tower. And Maria says no. She feels bad that she was mean to Morgana. She doesn't feel like Morgana would be happy to see her. But she does have a necklace, and she knows about the slave boy that saved Morgana and kept coming to visit her at the brothel. And she still has a necklace from that slave boy that he was going to give her for her birthday, but he never got to give it to her. And she gives that to Michel and says that Michel should give that to Morgana. I also think that Michel like figures out this twist like before I did. Like
yeah, it took me a
nah,
while.
same.
Michel's like, I have a suspicion that the Lord isn't who he says he is, and it's like, where, what?
Because Pauline says that the Lord changed like 4 years ago.
Well, that's the point where, yeah, but he there was like stuff before that point that I was like, what?
Yeah, I thought this was a moment where he figured it out, because
This is the moment where he really definitively says it, yeah. Where
because Maria had just been saying the slave boy's dead, and then she says the Lord changed 4 years ago, and he's like, wait, but Morgana was there 7 years ago, not 4.
I didn't figure it out. That's my only contribution to that.
and then Michel thinks to himself, like, he's like, Morgana, is the slave actually dead? And then it cuts to dinner time.
Am I the slave boy?
I had no idea. I mean, I figured out that like Jacopo was the slave, but I had no idea how he could have gotten to be the Lord until.
No, it doesn't. There's no. I don't think you could guess any of this.
Yeah.
This part.
Nah, I don't think so either.
This
Yeah,
is a lot. So at dinner, Jacopo's a big jerk, but Yukimasa and Mel are like, nah, you should listen to this guy, and. And he's like, who do you think you are? Like, oh, you've got to my people, have you? Like, he's really suspicious, of course.
How long have you been working against me? It's like, 2 days.
Yeah.
I love that so much. He's like, how long has it been? 2 days. Like, 2 days? Like, what's the matter with you guys?
And yeah, they're like, you have to give in. Like, they're like, you need to do this. Like, they're just like, and he's just like trapped, right? And so he gets so upset, but he realizes he's trapped. So he's like, I'll give you my key, but fine, take my key. But he doesn't want to tell his story, refuses to tell his story. And Michel calls him Jacopo, and is like, who are you really? And Jacopo is so upset. He tries to stab Michel, and runs at him with a knife. And I think he does stab him through his hand or something. his other hand. And, but they fall, and then they fall down, and he's, rearing back, about to stab Michel, but the necklace falls out of Michel's pocket, and they both stop and look at the necklace, and, the necklace begins to emit a cloud of darkness, and everyone can see it. Mel, Yukimasa, they can all see it. And you have a choice. You can reach into the darkness or push the Lord aside. So, focus on fighting him off. I guess the correct answer is to reach into the darkness. I didn't do the other one.
I did.
I did the other one.
Yeah.
What happens if you don't reach into the darkness?
They immediately cut his head off.
Oh, well.
Well, not they.
It's pretty quick. Yukimasa does kill Jacopo pretty quickly.
Yeah. They cut off Jacobo's head. Well, Yukimasa does. He's like, what, he was attacking you. We can take his key. And it's like, no, we talked about this. No killing. and then Michelle's like, well, I guess I don't have the story. Like, good enough. Let's go free Morgana. But, what ends up kind of happening is, so basically Morgana's like, I'm going to curse the three of you. And then it's like, well, without,
she thinks Michel is actually the Lord.
Yeah.
Exactly. So she's like, I'm gonna curse you to eternity, and he's like, no, hold on, you got the wrong guy here. Let's not be hasty. But he gets plunged into eternal darkness.
Yeah, the ending is called Darkness Everlasting.
Well,
Yeah, that's right,
go.
Darkness Everlasting.
So if you reach into the darkness, then this is a door. We're going through a door. We're going through Jacopo's door. We go into the door, and this is also a hint that we're still in the mansion, because there's doors.
I mean, it's not literally a door like the other ones were, but...
Yeah, it is the concept of door, which we have also gone through many concept of doors at this point.
True, yes.
So Jacopo's now the narrator. When this happened, I was nervous. Because I didn't want to listen to Jacopo that much.
Wow.
But it was fine.
It's 3 pages of text. I mean, and it's just the full screen of text.
Yeah, it's like reading a short story.
So we start with a scene of Morgana praying for the dead at a cemetery. Jacopo has come to visit her, and she's living at the brothel at this time, and he comes to visit her to apply lotion to her face. He obviously has a crush on her.
Yep.
Yeah, that's...
Mysteries abound.
Yeah, which I didn't get at this point, but later they pointed out that he's 20 and she's 12.
I did not get the
It's
age
weird.
difference at all. I imagined this quote-unquote slave boy to be 16.
Yeah.
And he's not. He's 22.
And he keeps referring to himself as boy.
And Maria does not help in this situation at all.
No, they're encouraging it.
Yeah, I think her exact words were, I was waist deep in dick at that age.
Yeah,
Yep.
that wasn't the exact
That was... yeah.
Well, I mean, also...
Well, he insists later that he's not the pedophile, it's just her, it's not the other kids.
quote. His thing is,
But it's really, I mean, one kid is bad enough, you don't really need the other ones.
Everybody in this fucking story has to have some taboo bullshit that they're trying to do, and I guess, we have to also have pedophilia in terms of, But I don't know.
He's also going to wait until she's 16.
We don't have to.
yeah,
We
he's
don't
like,
have to.
oh, I'll wait 4 years. I'm not really a pedophile. I'll wait 4 years.
So he's not a pedophile in that, he's, sexually attracted to children. He's just in love with Morgana.
I can see the potential in her, I guess.
He's in love with Morgana the way that Jacob from Twilight is in love with Renesmee, the vampire baby, but he waits until she hyper ages to 16 before he chooses to court her.
That's a thing?
Oh, yeah, it is. It's my favorite part.
Wow.
Anyway, it's the day of Morgana's birthday, and we know that that's the day of the bandit raid. Jacopo, so he's like, come to your birthday party, it'll be, please, she's like, I don't care, and being her usual unpleasant self. And he's like, no, like, it'll be good. I'll be there. So you should be there. And she's like, whatever. Okay.
It's actually a little flirty, like it's kind of like banter at this point, you know, they're going back and forth.
Yeah. But she's still, like, he's trying a lot harder than she is.
Yeah.
And Jacopo talks about himself a little bit, about his background. He was poor, but he wasn't a slave. He was a citizen. The reason that he was there during the slave revolt was that he helped incite the revolt. And he says that after that, a woman reached out to him, and they kind of looked similar, and she claimed to be his mother. And she says that she had a child with the lord of the Barnier estate, and she has a gold ring to prove that that's the case, I guess. And he's like, okay, lady, I'll think about it. If that's what you call yourself. And so that's on the table, but he did not. He said he needs time to think about it. He's not just gonna agree with this woman's scheme to become try to assert his place as the rightful lord due to this power vacuum after the lord had been killed.
He's very apprehensive about it because I think he sees the values of becoming a lord, even if it's not true. But he's also kind of afraid of it, I guess for the right reasons, because he didn't really help him.
And he's also just a pretty street smart guy. Like, he picks up on the fact that this seems like a scam. He's like, I'm a scammer. I know somebody's pulling one on me.
Yeah, and he talks a lot later on about, like, being heroic and stuff like that, and how, like, if her story was real, then it would be, like, heroic, but because the story's fake, he's just another scam artist.
Yeah.
No, regardless of his intentions in his heart, like, it's a scam story. And, but yeah, they talk, then they go to the party. Jacopo says that he's 22, and that it apparently in the year, like, 990 or whatever, it was still weird for someone who was 22 to want to marry a 12-year-old. I don't know.
No, there's no consistency here. In the same way that, like, the tone and the language changes a lot in this game, you know, like, suddenly he's yelling cur all the time, and then everybody else is talking with, like, modern vernacular, is sort of the same thing with, like, there's not really historical accuracy. I don't think it would have been a big deal for 22 and 12 in whatever time period this is.
Even in a city like this, are you sure 12 isn't a little too young for actual marriage?
I think it's it was, I think as soon as you reached
like puberty, right?
Yeah.
As soon as you could bear children, it's like, boom.
Yeah, and you were frequently married before that. Like, children were frequently married in this time period.
Yeah.
They just waited because you couldn't bear children. Literally, it was just a logistics thing.
Anyway, they put a thing in there about it, and, like, Maria, like, teases him and stuff, and it just feels like not something that would really happen at that time. But Maria pressures Jacopo she tries to get him to confess his feelings to Morgana at the party when they're all, like, sitting around chatting. And, also all of the prostitutes who work at the brothel, they like, talk about their clients and stuff, and, like, Morgana just, like, kind of, like, sits in the corner and is uncomfortable. And Jacopo's like, hey, guys, can we stop talking about dicks for, like, a minute? And, Maria tries to get him to she's like, oh, Morgana, do you like anybody? Is there anybody that you like? And Morgana's like, yes, God.
You know, like the really ripped Jesus, you know, that Jesus.
Like, I feel like that, like, loops back around to being, like, the Tumblr meme where we tell people to go to church. You know, like, it's like that. Like, and, but basically, Jacopo, he, like, in telling the story, he underscores, like, he wanted so badly to make Morgana's life into something good. He wanted to rescue her from the horrible place where she was, and take her to see the world, and make up for all the horrible things that she had to endure in her life. And, when the bandits attack, he is unable to fight them off. He gets stabbed, and, barely survives. He seems like he got stabbed in the stomach.
Probably left for dead.
Yeah. and he feels completely powerless, which I think is a really interesting parallel to Michel and Michel's struggles with feeling powerless. It's like the same kind of language and the whole thing of like, I thought I was real strong, but I'm not actually. So after that event, the bandits attacking, and they took a bunch of people. They took Morgana. They killed a bunch of people. Maria made it okay, and like a couple other people, but he like sees them, they're just crying and they don't know what to do. And after that feeling of powerlessness, Jacopo decides to take the mysterious woman up on her offer. And when he does, he's like, you're not really my mother. This is your plan. And he like lays out exactly what her plan is, and she's like, you're right. So do you want to do this or not? And he's like, yeah, let's do it.
He's like, yeah, now that everything's on the table, I'm game.
Yeah. And of course, so he doesn't, but he says to all his friends, like, he goes along with her story to all of his friends, and he says, like, no, I am the descendant of Bagné, and Maria is the only one who doesn't believe him. And so then they are not friends anymore. And Jacopo thinks that if he really was a hero, like, if this was the real story, then he would be happy, but what does he say? This is really just about one woman's desire for revenge and one man's desire for power. So he takes his place as the lord, and the other nobility also, like, doesn't buy it. And so they try to send assassins after him and stuff, like neighboring lords and stuff. And so, he can't trust anybody. The other nobility are trying to kill him. And so, in terms of what's going on in the city, then he basically all around struggles to meet unrealistic expectations from the people and also from himself of how much he wanted to help everybody. And the reason why, like, everybody was like, oh, he's making it easy for if you're a merchant, but not for everyone. But he was like, well, I didn't have any money when I started. Like, the old lord spent all this money on blood feasts, so I don't have any money, so I gotta raise more, I gotta get more taxes, so I'm gonna encourage more merchants to come here, and then they're gonna, we're gonna have more money, and then we'll be able to help people in the slums, once we have more money. And I guess it's funny because I didn't think about it, but it's only been 4 years.
Yeah.
And people are so pissed, right? Like, and it's only been 4 years. Like,
Yeah, but of course people are pissed. That's what happens in real life too.
yeah.
And he's really good at being a dictator or robber baron. It's like the only thing he's actually good at is, like, becoming this sort of, like, this autocratic, leader of people. I mean, he's good at consolidating power, but it's not like that. He doesn't have any other skill set.
He also goes straight into his, like, doing good, like, must have sacrifices. Which is exactly what he said in the third chapter too.
Yeah, and he ends up having the people closest to him killed because they're the ones who keep, like, tearing him down and being like, you shouldn't be doing this. And but then he has all those people killed, and then he has no one left to fight for because he had them all killed. So he just fucks everything up. Like, not very, much time has passed, and he already fucked it all up.
It also explains why when he talks to Michel and he's like, you convinced him of this in 2 days? He's like, it took me 4 years, I still haven't convinced people anything.
Yeah. And, so then we find out that Jacopo made the plan to capture Morgana without knowing that it was her. That, like, I guess, like, magical healing blood was, like, a very common thing or something, because he's not like, oh, the magical healing blood witch must not be the same magical, like, girl that I know from who was captured and used for her blood.
I don't think it didn't even know about that, though.
Yeah, I don't think he knew about the blood.
Well, I was gonna say, isn't there, like, some bullshit thing that, like, rich people do where they, like, get blood transfusions for young people, like, because it's... Yeah. So, maybe even back then, too, it's like, healing blood, I gotta get in on that,
Yeah, but I think even at this phase, Jaco just heard about this healing witch and not necessarily that it was a blood thing.
No, I think he knew about the blood thing, but I don't think he knew that Morgana had the same powers when she was at the previous Lord's mention.
Oh, maybe he didn't know that. He just knew that she was being tied up and cut, but he didn't know maybe that it was for healing blood because he wasn't really a slave there. He just showed up to incite the riot. And maybe she didn't tell him. I don't know. Maybe it was also very common back then.
It could be, it could just be like, like a new franchise open. Like, we got a healing witch blood over by the lake. Oh, okay, great, good. We used to have to go like 40 miles for that, but goodness, she's local now.
Yeah, just like claiming that your unwanted pregnancy was like a miracle pregnancy from God. Some things never go out of style. Healing blood. So
what's interesting is that the fact that there is a witch with like magical healing blood got leaked somehow, even though it was just Mel and Nelly.
Yeah.
I mean, she kept to herself for 4 years, and then Mel got her to use the blood, and then somehow everyone knows.
It's true.
Fucking Mel.
Yeah. Big mouth strikes again.
Mel. That piece of fucking shit.
So, so Jacopo just is like, go get her, and then, Yukimasa brings her back in a bag covered in blood. And
missing an arm, and he's like, you know what, man, things go wrong. Things happen. You didn't give any instructions you didn't say all the limbs, okay? So like stuff happens. I had to think on the fly. I did some improvisation, and this is what you get.
I actually prefer to think of it like Jacopo's like, what did you do? And Yukima's like, what?
Yeah.
You got her arm. And it's like, and
got most
she's
of it.
Here. She bleeds, obviously,
Yeah, I had to make sure she bleed first. You're welcome for the quality control.
Some people.
I just put it in a spigot, bud. I just made it easier for you to access the blood.
Yeah.
God. So then, of course, Morgana comes out of the bag, and he's like, it's Morgana, and she's like, is that you? But of course she's lost a lot of blood, so she doesn't really see him as him. She remembers him as the previous lord. She perceives him as the previous lord. And Jacopo doesn't correct her because he needs to protect his backstory in front of Yukimasa. So she says, like, you cut me, and I'll never forgive you, I'll hate you forever, and she starts yelling stuff. And he just, like, allows her to believe that that's who he is. And he says, would anyone ever believe me if I said this isn't how I wanted it to turn out? And he's just continued with this charade since then.
It also makes no sense at all. Like at this point, like Yukimasa's not really a threat to him. Like, is this the only scheme he has going right now? Is just
he's so paranoid he can't admit, I guess, to Yukimasa that his name is Jacopo or that he knows Morgana for some reason.
Yeah, I guess. Like it's just, and he doesn't have any allies anymore.
And he doesn't know that Yukimasa wouldn't care,
exactly.
Because he's so paranoid.
Yeah.
And the only reason he comes up with the 3 keys thing and giving Yukimasa and Mel a key is just because there will always be other people with him when he's with her. Because he didn't trust himself to not just let her go if he was alone with her.
So much. Why? Why would you do this? And then, so the blackness clears, like the black smoke, and Michel thinks like, oh, like, did I just do to him what Morgana did to me? Like, is this what it looks like to make someone go through a door when you're in control? And Yukimasa and Mel did not see the door. They did not see the story. They just saw, like, the blackness envelop Jacopo and Michel for, like, a second and then dissipate. But they can tell that some transference has happened between them because their attitude toward each other changes. And Jacopo's like, I had intended to set her free after the Harvest Festival. I was just gonna wait. I was just needed a special occasion. And Michelle's like, you did the same shit with the railroad, and it didn't work out. You can't wait for an occasion. You have to just fucking do it. And Jacopo's like, you're right.
I'll start my diet today.
Yeah. And Michel gives Jacopo the necklace to give to Morgana. And they all head to the tower. They climb the stairs. As they climb the stairs, Michel thinks to Giselle, like, I did it! And, they approach the door, and they hear a voice beyond the door, and they're like, is someone in there? And there's a voice saying, like, Morgana, stay with me. And, as they open the door, they see that Morgana is talking to herself, and she has two voices. There's Morgana's normal voice that we've experienced, which is her persuasive, sort of asshole voice. And then, the white-haired girl's voice, who, speaks in all lowercase letters, and is like the white-haired girl. She's very uncertain, she doesn't know what to do. And Morgana is telling the white-haired girl, like, not to give up. And, not to, and then, Michel runs over to her, they unchain her, and we get a CG of Michel holding Morgana, and his hair is so long. And Morgana looks up at Michel and thinks that he's an angel, and she says, have you come to rescue me? Have you come, from my father? And he says, yes, yes, I am. And like, I imagine, like, Yukimasa in the back is like, he said he wasn't an angel.
This is why I'm such a jerk to people. They just lie constantly.
And, she's like, please deliver me back to my father. And he says, and she's like, is my father proud of me? And he says, yes, your father's proud of you, very proud of you. And she dies.
Yeah. And clearly this is just a psychotic break that she's having. Like, she is just, her, ability to perceive things is just broken, and now she thinks it's an angel here. She's supposed to sort of split into multiple personalities and hallucinating that this is just an angel, and that's it. There's nothing left after this for her.
And then the others are like, what do we do? Like, we were too late. And Michel's like, no, when you die, your soul still is nearby, so you all have to confess to her right now. She's here. Her soul is still here right now.
And they're like, hold on, real quick, I'm not sure if we have souls.
Oh yeah, it's fucking Jacopo. That was so funny. He was like, Michel's like, shut the fuck up.
It's like, listen, I know you just made me experience my path in this weird black smoke, but the soul thing is too far, bud.
So Michel makes them all confess to her and apologize, and they all apologize like children who have been brought to the front of the class.
Yeah, you can just see them looking at their feet and kind of like, shuffling and kicking the ground, being like, oh, I'm real sorry, I made your arm come off, and,
Yukimasa does not know how to apologize. He's like, I'm sorry, I have nothing else, I don't know what else I'm supposed to say.
I mean...
But they all say, like, I was wrong to do this, like, this was bad that I did it. It's not, it's not like they just say I'm sorry.
Right. They do get into the details, or at least the other two get into the details a lot more.
A lot of it is also just like, I'm not sorry about doing this, but I didn't want you to get hurt, despite directly hurting you.
So we good now, soul?
Yeah, after they do that, Jacopo helps Michel carry Morgana's body outside, and before they're gonna step over the threshold, because they're like, as soon as we step out there with her body, everyone's gonna kill us. And so before they go out there, they all say goodbye to Michel, and Michel gives all of them advice. And Michel says, Mel, in your next life, don't look away. And Mel's like, I'll burn it into my soul. And Yukimasa's lesson is to show restraint. And Jacopo's lesson is to be more open with yourself.
Yeah, it's the Wizard of Oz ending.
Yes.
Oh my god, it kind of is. Wait a minute.
Right?
It really is.
Wow, holy shit.
Tin Man ain't got no heart.
Yeah,
the Scarecrow ain't got no brains.
Yeah.
And
Lion's gotta stop killing people.
Oh, God. Okay.
It just is the Wizard of Oz ending. Yeah.
It's great.
So, they open the door and they pass through the threshold, and as they pass through the door, Michel ends up in a different place. He ends up in the actual, historically what happened ending, which is that everyone's dead. And he's like, oh no, it didn't work.
Somehow this didn't cure everyone's disease.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, this is the realm of the dead. He didn't actually change history. Like, that's why he could open the door. This was just a reconstruction. They're still in the realm of the dead. They're not.
They never traveled to the past.
They didn't actually go back in time. Yeah. Time does not go back, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
So in response, Michel yells at Morgana, at the sky, like, well, there you go. Now you know the truth. And, because he has control over the mansion, I guess now, he teleports himself back into the mansion at the present time. And when he arrives, or like during the process of getting there, he is suddenly in front of the white-haired girl.
Gasp.
And she's holding a sword.
And who looks different than we've seen her before.
Yeah, and that's where we're gonna cut it, because it's been an hour.
Mm.
And we'll continue the rest of the game next time.
We're going to finish it up and give our final thoughts.
What do we think about the three lads and their excuses?
I mean, Yukimasa at least can't help it. Kind of.
Yeah, I don't feel like any of them deserve to be cursed for all eternity for the level of asshole that they were.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this was just to, like, not excuse them, but to humanize them and make them out to be more than just complete evil assholes. Is to understand that they have some redeemable qualities, even if that doesn't overwhelm the negatives.
Yeah. Their actions are still bad, but they are just people. They are people who act on, desires or, this instinct or trying to, so in some cases trying to protect other people. Like, they do the wrong things horrifically and keep making bad choices, but they're still just people at heart, meaning they're just flawed beings trying to exist. So, like, this eternal punishment isn't quite, deserved for someone who, isn't really, just this pure benevolent, like just nothing else around them, but just evil.
Yeah, I think the point of the game is that people in the real world aren't usually evil just for evil's sake, just because they're evil. That's something you see in stories, but in the real world, even if something looks totally evil to you, there's usually reasons behind it. There's usually the things, they still may do bad things, but they have reasons, they have the circumstances, and it's not like the bad things aren't bad because of that. They definitely are. This isn't about redeeming any of them.
It doesn't free them from consequences, yeah.
No.
Right.
And I think they accept that at the end, too. They all accept the consequences that are coming for them.
But they don't deserve what... Morgana thinks they're pure evil, and that's why she gave them, like, eternal punishment. And they don't deserve that, probably. Probably.
No, probably not. Well...
Yeah, I mean, an infinite punishment for a finite crime is sort of, in and of itself, illogical.
And there's degrees to this. I mean, Mel is mostly innocent. I mean, it had some bad decisions, but... Yeah, really the circumstances were such that, like, he had no choice in most cases.
Mel has no power. He can't yield it all that well. He makes poor choices to risk other people and put them in harm's way, but he doesn't actually have any power to change.
Yeah, Yukimasa has something innate in him. I mean, he's a psychopath.
Right.
So is that, like, something that he should be punished for, just because he was born that way? That's the question that the game poses, I guess.
Right.
And Jacopo is the most complex one, because, like, he had good intentions, but that led him to do really bad things, and he did have a way to change it, to do something else, and he didn't.
He's also the weakest character, which is weird when you're talking about Mel involved too, but Jacopo just can't face his own mistakes.
Mhm.
So it leaves him extremely weak.
Yeah.
Is he the most at fault, technically?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
he is.
kind of say
Absolutely.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
if we're ranking them.
Yeah. He possesses the ability to change and just doesn't do it because of fear.
He could have stopped it. I mean, the moment he saw Morgana out of the bag, he could have stopped it.
Yeah, and the other ones don't deal with pride the same way. Like, Mel is selfish, but it's not like Jacopo is like too proud to have a conversation with himself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's more running from himself than anybody else is. I mean, Yukimasa knows what he is. He's not running from anything.
Yeah, Yukimasa's ahead of him in that way, and he knows what he is. And also it's interesting because it's like, I don't know, he has the most, like, he came from being like the boy that, you know, rescued Morgana, so he also had the biggest fall. You know, the others, they were already kind of like that. They're just kind of being themselves.
Yep.
Anyway, fuck him, honestly. Like,
It's also hard to get past the 12-year-old thing.
I still hate him.
I know, like, yeah, Morgana's like, all right, maybe not eternal, but, you know, 100 years.
They got a lot of talking to do. Like, if they want to do, like, a Michel and Giselle, like, talk it out so that we can get married later type situation. Like, there's a lot more talking that they need to do.
It's like the concept of purgatory versus hell. Like, oh, y'all need to pay for your crimes for quite a while, but eternal damnation probably isn't in the cards.
Right.
But it does explain why the white-haired girl appears as Jacopo's wife in that chapter versus just someone who appears. I think the connection between Morgana and Jacopo.
Yeah, I think the parallels between the original stories and the quote-unquote modern story is very strong. And I mean, especially because they keep making the same mistakes, too.
Yeah, and the white-haired girl's relationship with all three of them in their own particular stories earlier is kind of her relationship with those people.
Yeah. So next time, we're going to learn about the white-haired girl, finally.
And tie all the other loose ends.
Yep. Are we gonna find out about George and the painting?
Yeah, we will.
I mean, if we read to the end, we will.
Wow.
Okay.
There we go. I thought that was gonna be like a DLC side story or something, but I guess that would be silly because it's such an obvious thing that's there.
Now, there are only two things that I think are loose ends in this game that I can think of. And I know they are dealt with somewhere else.
It really makes me want to play the additional content for this game. We might do that. I don't know.
So one of them I might as well tell you now because I finished the game and I looked up all sorts of things about it. So do you remember that line that we talked about in Michel's chapter? In Giselle's chapter, where Michel said that there was someone else coming to the dimension at some point with a strange disease. So I think people who are listening to this might know that this is handled in the sequel. This is also a story that's told in the sequel. But it actually...
Wait, there's a sequel?
The other game, the side game.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
got it.
Not direct continuation of story, but side.
Yeah. So this is a story they tell in that game, but it actually comes from a preview book they sold like a year before the game came out. So the company sold a preview book that had a short story, like a textual story, that was this story about this guy with strange disease visiting dimension. And that's why the line is in this game. And then they remade it they actually made like a short section about it in the sequel game.
Oh.
But this was like the first material that was released about any of these characters. That short story about this guy visiting dimension.
Oh.
Yeah, I bought that like digital edition of that book, and I'm going to read it.
Cool.
Yeah,
So
awesome.
maybe we'll read that as part of the podcast, or maybe we'll read it ourselves. We'll find out next time.
So
Next
one more to
time.
go. Read if you're reading along, just get to the end, and then we're gonna recap.
Yeah, and then next time we'll talk about all of our thoughts on this game, which is going to be a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Nah.
There's a lot of loose ends to tie up before the end.
No.
Also, there's just a lot of like this it touches a lot of different genres and themes and other media, and I think this thing just kind of branches out into a lot of different stuff. So I think we can tie this all back together and sort of, all those thoughts can be saved for next week.
Until then, see you next time, folks.
No one deserves punishment for anything. Good night.
Good night.
Fata Morgana.
Fata Morgana.
Fata Morgana.